everybody, and welcome to today's Agents in Action. Today, we're going to be going over SmythOS and API calls, connecting the dots between agents in the world. I'm Amber Grainer. I'm head of community and DevRel at SmythOS, and today we have Raul Parihana. I may have butchered that. I'm sorry if I did. He's our QA engineer at SmythOS, so you're in really good hands today with Raul. And one of the things I want to remind folks, if you're watching on the live stream or if you're watching you're partaking in the webinar itself, if you've got questions, please raise your hands or put them in the chat box. Or if you're on the live stream, add it to the chat. We'll try to get to that and make sure we get to your questions. We've got about 30 minutes of presentation, 15 minutes of Q&A, should we need that. But if there's something that's not clear as Raul's going through this, please raise your hand and we can get you your question asked in real time. So without further ado, Raul, I'm going to quit sharing. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. So let me share my screen. Okay, so here I have an agent with multiple scenarios where I am using the API call component in different different use cases. And well, we are going to see or go through all of them to see like what are the possibilities that we have, how to use the API call component. So let's start for a really easy one, which is a simple GET request, like the one that we have in this component. Like this API doesn't require any authorization, any special condition. Well, it's a GET request, so it doesn't need any body payload, extra headers or something like that. So yeah, it's like the most simple example of doing as HTTP request with the API call component that we have in SmythOS. So for this example, I am just using this API. It is called random user. It just retrieves random user information depending on the query parameters that we provide in the URL. So in this specific case, we can see first that in the settings of the API call component, first in here we have the dropdown to define the method, and then the URL. And for this specific case, we don't need any more. You can see that all the options, well, we are not using them. And well, for the query parameters, we have in SmythOS an easy way to provide them. Here in the URL field, we have an edit button here. If we click on it, well, we have this modal where we can provide the query parameters. In this case, we are using this one that is called results, and we are providing this value through an input of the component. Here in the input, you can see that I have an input called input that is providing me that that value that I am injecting in here in this query parameter. So that is something that you can do. You can create inputs in your API call component and then use that information and inject that information in all the settings that we have in the API call component, like in this case for the results parameter. Then I'm using this other query parameter that this random user API has, which is called, well, it has this name. It is just to exclude some information that is retrieved from the API. In this case, well, I just want to exclude the location, login, and well, yeah, this needs to be provided in this format because that's how this random user API instruct to provide this information. And well, yeah, that is the only thing that I'm doing in here. So that is how you can provide query parameters. And yeah, we can just execute it, this workflow. Okay. Okay, now let's take a look at the outputs, we have two. These in blue ones are default outputs. So by default, we have the response and the headers. In the headers, we have this. And in the response, we have the information that we got from that API. In this case, we have only the information of one user, because in this case, well, I'm providing the value of 0, but well, random user API, and when we provide 0, it's going to retrieve 1. But I can change just by changing in here to any other number and executing this again. Then, well, okay, let me check. Why is not? Okay, yeah, I know. Yeah, in here it's still 0. Yeah, sorry for that. Let me execute again this. And now, yes, we have 4 users. Here we have the results for. And in here, you can see that I don't have any information like location, like the query or the options that we are excluding through this query parameter. So that is how you can do a simple get request. It's a really simple example. And now you can see that besides the default outputs, we have these other outputs. So let's explain a bit. This name, this special name, underscore error, this name for an output, it is used in all our components in SmythOS, and it is used to just catch the errors that are generated in case of some issue in the execution of the component. So let's make this HTTP request fail. Like I'm just going to, for example, change the URL. So now this is this URL is not correct, so it's going to fail. If I execute this again, now it failed. And now I can just hover over this error output. And if I check here, I can see that it catch the error of the execution. In this case, well, it is just saying that the address, the URL is not correct. So that's really useful when you are building your workflows and you want to see why a component is failing, or also can be used to just use, for example, this information connect to other components to just catch these errors and to display to the agent what are the errors in the workflow. So the agent or the LLM or any other component knows about the error, and well, you can take an action in that kind of cases. So yeah, that's about this. This is not just specific for the API call component. You can use it in all the other components. You just have to follow this name convention underscore error. And yeah, SmythOS is going to recognize it, and it's going to put there the error in case of failure. Then we have these other 2 extra outputs that are just isolated information from the default outputs. In this case, if I click on the edit of this extra output, I can see that in the expression field, I have this kind of name, which is just following the JSON path notation. So how this works is really simple. You just start with the default output from, well, the default output that you want to take information. So in this case, I want to take some information from the response. and I want in a specific the results key of the response JSON. So if I just check how is the structure of the response, so let me just fix this to generate a correct response. The structure is this, the JSON is this. So here we have the results key, and in here we have the array with all the user information. And also I have in here another key that is called info, and this is another JSON with this information. So let's say that I want to isolate only the array of the user's information. So that's why I just create this extra output with this notation, response.results. So by just doing that, in the execution, well, I'm just going to get that information in that extra output. In here, you can see that I only have that array. And the same is working for this info. It is just isolating that key from the parent JSON, this response JSON. And the same I can do if you want to get some information from the headers. If you have any case where you want to get some information from the headers or isolate some information from here, you can do the following. Well, you can follow the same steps, creating an extra output and using the expression field in here with this kind of notation. Now, this you can use the expression field, or you can use also the output name. So it is going to work the same way if I do this, if I leave this empty. So either way, it's going to work, but well, just to keep it clean and well, with a nice name, or maybe more to handle a more friendly name in the output name, you can use the expression field and put any name in here. Like if you use the expression, then the output name can be whatever you want. Okay, so yeah. So this is a simple GET request. Now let's see another example where we are going to use some kind of authorization, like an API key, have your token. So let's see those examples. For example, this one. This is using an API from Data for SEO. This is a service for SEO. And in here, you can see that in the headers, we have this authorization header. So there are multiple APIs, like the random user, or they don't need really an authorization. And there are other APIs that are the same, like to check the weather or to check something else. But in the most of the cases, well, you're going to need some authorization. And one way to authorize the access to use an API is with this header and with this format, basic and some credential. Now, why I have this kind of notation in the authorization? Because this is referring to a key that is saved in the vault. So in your account in the SmythOS, you have in here the vault. And the vault is just the place where you can just save sensitive data, like API keys. Well, also you have you can provide your own AI providers, but well, here in the API keys section, you can just add sensitive information, any kind of key. And in here, it is saved that this key that I'm using for this API. So how to add headers in your API call? Again, you just have to click on here, and in here you can just keep adding headers. So as soon as you write something in here, you're going to see that it keeps adding more fields to keep adding more headers. And you can see in here also that you can inject information from the inputs, global variables, or also your keys that are saved in your vault. So that is how I am just referring to my key saved in the vault in here, because I just select the key that I want to use from this list. Now, this authorization, this method normally is required like a special encoding of your credential. Normally, to provide that header, you need to let me just write something in here. Yeah, let's use a note. So normally for that kind of header, you need to provide like in this way, authorization, basic, and your key is like the encoded result of your username and password. Like this in this format needs to be encoded in base64 or the encoding method that the API is required, and the result of that needs to be provided in here in that place. So what I did is just to do that encoding process, and the result of that I just save it in the vault, and I'm just reusing it in here. So that is one way. Well, then let's execute this just to make a simple test. It was successful. And as you can see, this is a post request. So it requires a body payload. In this case, I'm providing this. And yeah, as the other result with the other call, we have again a response, which is a JSON. We have the headers, and in here I have other extra outputs that are isolating information from the response, the same way that I did in the previous example. So for example, this task count, well, it is in some place in here. Here we have it. So yeah, that is one common way that APIs require to provide the credentials with this authorization basic header. Then we have another, which is the barrier token. So let me just check. Here we have this API call component is using the GitHub API. In this specific example, this is just to create a GitHub repo. And in here, you can see that it is basically the same format, but the only change is that instead of basic, it's using in here beer. And again, well, I'm just reusing a GitHub, well, an API key that is saved in the vault. My GitHub API key, it is saved in the vault in here. Here you can check. And well, to keep it safe, it is saved in the vault, and I'm just making reference in here in this API call component. Then, well, it is not really required to save your keys in the vault. You can just provide it directly in here. But, well, it's highly recommended to put your API keys in the vault, because in that way you are not exposing your API key directly in your components. Because you know that you can export your agents, it's going to generate a file, and if you are just exposing your API key directly, well, those exported files are going to contain your API key. So that is not really a safe way to handle your sensitive information. So it's highly recommended to put that information in the vault and just make reference and reuse that information in this way. Now, this way, this bearer token, it is really simple. It's not like the previous example that you have to encode something and then provide to the header. The bearer token needs to be provided directly. So this is really the bearer token that was provided in my account in GitHub, and that it's directly referenced in here, and that's it. So let's just execute this. So, well, for this example, I'm just providing the repo name that I want to create. And you can see that I am receiving a name in here, and I'm injecting this information directly in the body payload in here. Here you can see, and you can see also that when I click, you can see that I have other options, which this is my input, and these purple ones are the global variables of the agent that I have in this example. So you can check in here. I have these other global variables that I also can inject in my components. So yes, you can do that. You can inject the global variables input also in the body payload. And you can also notice that when I use the content type of application JSON, this text area looks different. Like I have a small editor because, well, normally the body payload is going to be a JSON. So to make it easier for the users to put the structure of the body payload, well, yeah, this kind of a small editor that we have here make it simple. So let's execute this. I'm just going to provide any name in here. And well, yeah, we can check the response, the headers, and well, the execution was successful. Now, that is about the bearer token. And another way to authenticate that is really common is the OAuth. So you can also use that kind of authentication in your API calls. So let's just look for an example. Here I am using the OAuth for Google. This small workflow, the only thing it's doing is to get my latest emails. So if I execute this, okay. So if I check the response, it's just this array with IDs, because this is the way that Google handles the emails. If you retrieve the list of the emails, you only retrieve the IDs. And so then with the IDs, you can actually read or get the content of the emails. But yeah, well, let me just explain and check the settings of this component to see how it is working. So this is the URL, the method is get, and here we have the auth section. In here, we only have a drop down, you can see, that says auth connections. And the place where we manage all the auth connections is the vault again. So if we check in here, in the vault, I have this section called auth connections. And I have only one, it's the one that I'm using in that component. So to add an auth connections, you can just provide the information that is required here. A name, this can be whatever your name, whatever the name you want to put to name these auth connections. The platform, again, this can be whatever you want. It's just to identify this. And then is in this drop down, this auth service, you have a list of possible options. First, these first three options are Google, LinkedIn, and Twitter. These are just default options. If we select, for example, Google, we are going to see the whole configuration, all the fields that are needed. And these URLs of URL, token URL, and scopes are pre-populated. So if you want to use or auth using for the service that for the service of Google, well, you just need to select in here. You will have all these fields pre-populated, and the only thing that you need to provide is the client ID and the client secret. And well, the way to get these two pieces of information, it's going to be different depending on the service that you're going to use. For Google, it's they have an amount of steps to follow to get this information, and well, depending on the service, it's going to be different. And the same is going to work if we select LinkedIn. We will have these options pre-populated. For Twitter, the same. But let's say that you want to use any auth for, well, any other service that is not Google, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Well, you have to first verify what version of auth is being used by that service. We have auth 1, auth 2. We have also this auth 2 client credentials. So between those three options, you have to verify if which one is used by the service that you want to configure. And yes, for example, let's say that the service that you want to use is using the auth version 2. You just select that. In this case, you see that the same fields are being used, but the only difference with the other, the Google or LinkedIn, well, is that, well, now you don't have these fields pre-populated. So you have to get that information from the service that you want to use. And the scopes, yeah, the same. Well, it's going to depend on the service that you want to use and depending on the what actions you want to use. And well, the advantage of this way of handling the auth connections is that you just have to configure the auth once. Then you just can reuse the same auth connection in all your API call components, in all your agents that you want to use. So it gives you more control and, well, more security about your auth connections. Because, well, again, if you just want to stop using, for example, this connection, you just have to sign out, and then, well, all the API call components that are using these auth connections are going to stop working. So you can be sure that that auth connection is not being used, that those credentials are not used in any of your agents. And also, well, here we have an option that it says duplicate. So you can, for example, inside of Google, you want to use, I don't know, the API for Gmail, but well, for another agent, you just want to use the API for the Google Documents. Well, you just have to duplicate the connection. And well, after that, you will have here the copy with all the information that you already provided. And then, well, because, well, all this information like auth URL, token URL, your credential, like client ID, client secret, all that information is going to be the same. The only thing that is going to change is the scopes. So then you can just duplicate the auth connections and then change the scopes. And well, you have a new auth connection ready to use for, well, another API inside of Google. And that is how this API call component is being connected to the Google API. From here, also you can add new auth connections or edit the existing one or sign out. So you can handle your auth connections from the API call component or also from the Vault page. So yeah, with those are the 3 ways to authenticate to use certain service, certain API. So let me check what other examples I have here. Yeah, well, maybe we can check these last 2 examples, which just show how flexible is the API call component in SmythOS to inject the information. In previous example, you just see that we were injecting pieces of the payload, but you can do also this, like inject the whole JSON of the body payload. So if you are, I don't know, you are getting the JSON that is going to be used by the API call component, I don't know, through a code component or something like that, then you can inject that whole JSON directly in the API call component in this way. Or if you are getting an array and that array needs to be injected again in the body of the API call component, you can do it in this way as well. Like you can inject a piece of the whole body instead of the whole body. So there are many ways to, I know, inject information, and that makes it really easy to handle. So I think that is all. Well, yeah, one last thing to explain maybe can be this section in advance that it says it's to use proxies. So in this API call component, I'm just providing this proxy. Again, well, for proxies, you're going to need to provide also the user and password, the credentials for the proxy that you are using. And you can, again, use the Vault for that. So if by any chance you want to use a proxy to do the API call, then you can just list in here. You can put multiple or a single proxy, depending on the use case. You can use multiple in case one of the proxy is going to fail, or just one, like in this example. But yeah, you also have the option to do that in the API call component. So yeah, I think that's all the cases. Those are the common cases for the API call component.
Raul, thank you so much for this presentation and going through the API calls and how you set that up. I don't think there's any questions. I don't see any right now, but what are some common, like you went through some use cases and things like, connecting to GitHub, connecting to, or sorry, connecting to your Gmail, connecting to LinkedIn, things like that. What are some other use cases that you've seen where these calls were not, these calls were used? Do you know?
Yeah, well, yeah. In all the agents, it's like really common that you will have to use the API call component because you want to use or integrate the agent with external services to automate some kind of workflows. And well, the most common cases is going to be like, or get information or submit information to some external services. And yeah, well, the most common is, well, I can say, well, maybe Google, because, well, it's a really known API. It's a service that is used, I think that by many people, and they offer a lot of APIs like, well, Google Documents, spreadsheets, Google Chat. They have a lot of services. And well, that's why also we have in the Vault a predefined way to configure the auth for Google, because these are really common services. And yeah, people use it a lot.
All right. For folks who are on the call, or maybe listen to the live stream, or maybe listen to the recording, one of the things we're looking at doing, in addition to more information, how you use the components and how we're going to break down all the steps that are used in SmythOS, one of the things we want to do in January, just to make things interesting, we're going to send out a poll, and we're going to ask, what agent would you like us to write live and in person? So one of the agents in action for January will be, we're going to pick somebody's agent and we're going to do it live. We're not going to set anything up ahead of time. We're going to do it as if you had just presented it with us, and we're going to walk through those steps. So be thinking about some simple agents that you might like to see us write, or take a look at SmythForged and all the things that have been submitted, or our examples, or anything like that. Maybe you want us to remix something for you. But let's think about how you would like to use these API calls, something that you would like to see us do. And we're going to make it really interesting starting next month. We're going to pick one agent to do live every month for one of the sessions, and go from there, because we want you to see, not just in theory, how all of these things work, and not just kind of going through it at a high level. We want, for a common phrase, we want to help you scratch that itch, right? So if you've got a need, we want to show you how we can do it in under 45 minutes or less. So think about that. We want to see that interaction. And Raul, who knows, you might be building one of those agents live for somebody, starting at the first of the year. But thank you so much for presenting. If you'll stop sharing your screen for just a second, I'll share mine.
Okay.
Give me one second. So as always, thank you for joining. If you can, go over to GitHub, go to SmythOS, star our repos. We'd love that. If you're like what we're doing, you like the open source efforts of it, and you want to keep it that way, help us out by starring that repo. You can also spin up your first agent. I did mine this week. Did a very simple agent, submitted it to SmythForged. It was super easy, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. Take a walk through our tutorials. If you're still not sure about how to do something, go over to SmythOS Academy. I'll share these slides, and you'll have the links, and they'll be put in the comments on the YouTube video. We also want you to take a look at our docs. Say hi in Discord if you're not already there. And again, check out our YouTube channel when you get a chance. And again, these links will be posted in the comments on the YouTube channel, and they'll be sent back out to all those who are registered for today's meeting. Starting in January of 2026, we're going to take a different approach to our community meetings. They still will be once a month to start, but if you're in if you're in Discord, we're sending out a poll. We want to know what time and what day of the week, because we realize not everybody is in the US time zone. And we want to make sure it's available to all those, not only our community meetings, but our agents in action. So we want to hear from you, because maybe this isn't the best time for everybody to join. So let us know, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. And next week, we've got our agents in action are going to be on security and observability. So we're going to walk you through how secure SmythOS really is next week. So if you're interested in the security piece of it, please join us next week. And thanks for joining us today. Raul, again, thank you. And we'll see you next week.